Welcome to Older Militarist Radio TV, and we're lifelong Catholics, and what we do is all for free, and for our love of Jesus Christ, and for our Holy Mother, the Church, and we'll defend our Holy Mother, the Church. Today's special episode we had in the making. I interviewed the father of Ignacio Echeverria Morales de Imperial. He was martyred on June 3rd, 2017 in London. And I had to do it in writing and in Spanish. And so we're going to read my interview now in English. And we welcome Brother Alexis on the show for his commentary.
Thank you, AJ, for having me on Ordo Militaris Radio TV and for giving me the honor to join you in making known to the English-speaking world a great Catholic hero of our generation who did the most brazen act of courage during the London Bridge attack in 2017 in London, England. Spaniard by birth. And we're going to discuss his life. AJ's asked all these questions, and you see behind AJ, you see a collage of him. He was a banker. He was a skateboarder. You see way over there as a skateboarder as a young man. Then you see over AJ's shoulder, he's sitting on a couch. AJ will have these photos on his website with his young son and with his family at the table there. And a Catholic and a true son of the Crusaders. And I get the impression from his surname that he's of Basque heritage. Okay, so AJ, what was your first question you asked?
Okay. Dear Mr. Alonso, thank you for allowing me to interview you in this way about the life of your son. He replies, first of all, my name is Joaquin Echeverria Alonso. In Spain, we use two last names. Echeverria is actually my last name.
Okay, yeah. So Alonso would be the last name of his mother on his mother's side. Okay.
So let's start learning about when Ignatius was born and when and where he was baptized. Ignacio Echeverria Morales de Imperial was born in a regional hospital in Ferrol. He was registered in the town where we lived, the municipality of at Pontes de Garcia Rodriguez. He was baptized in the parish Santa Maria de Pontes de Garcia Rodriguez.
So Ferrol, if you don't know, is in the Basque region of Spain on the north coast. And that town has a real Latin name. As Pontes means at the bridges of, and then it names the nobleman who built the bridge. So this is a town with a real historic heritage.
Yeah. So, what is his patron saint? And his father replies, Saint Ignatius of Loyola and his mother's family, there were other previous Ignatians, and they had great ties to the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits.
So the Jesuit order, if you don't know, was founded by Ignatius Loyola, who was a Basque. He was not a Spaniard, he was Basque. Well, excuse me, he would be called a Spaniard today because that's part of Spain. I don't want to offend anyone. But back then, it was called the Kingdom of Navarre.
When Ignacio was growing up, how important was the Catholic faith in making him the man he became? Ignacio was raised as a Catholic and attended Sunday Masses with his family from a very young age, made his first communion, and was confirmed. In his setbacks, he relied a lot on his devotion to overcome those problems, to understand and to settle them, and also to strive to overcome them. Being relatively old, he joined the Catholic Action Group in the parish of San Miguel de la Rosa in Madrid, where he attended the group weekly, for which he prepared his readings week after week. After his death, we were told that he was teaching Spanish-speaking children in a London parish.
Mhm. Okay, it's wonderful. I guess he was teaching them catechism. Mhm.
While you were in Spain, Ignatius learned about the great. Um, okay. While since you are in Spain, Ignacio learned about the great Spanish saints and the great holy heroes of the Reconquest, Saint Ferdinand, and did he admire him? Ignacio knew the history of Spain to a higher degree than his fellow students, and I suppose he respected especially the evangelical work of Spain in America and the humanitarian laws of Isabel the Catholic. For the rest, my relationship with him does not allow me to know details of his devotions. I do know that he was especially inspired by an uncle of his mother. He was a missionary in the jungle of Peru, named Antonio Horondo Correa. He became consecrated and made bishop in the diocese of Yan in Peru, and when he was old, he refused to return to Spain. In the warmth of his brothers and nephews, he died in Lima and was buried there.
Oh, really? So, what a heritage.
Did Ignatius ever talk to you about what he thought God was calling him to do with his life? Ignacio wanted to build a Christian family. He stated on some occasion that he could not marry a woman who did not have the same religious feeling. For the rest, he was determined to be a good professional, earn a good living, and be useful to society.
Okay, so really determined. That's great. Prudent man.
How did you hear about the Catholic Action Group and what kinds of events did you participate in with the group? When Ignacio became a member of Catholic Action, he lived in our house and had a very close relationship with his mother, so we knew a lot about his life. After his death, the priest who directed the Catholic Action Group, Daniel Silvano, told us that when he goes to live in London and has the opportunity to come to Spain, he usually visits him on Sundays to chat with him. I also know that he confessed to this priest.
Hmm.
It is hard for me to. It's hard for me that the reason Ignacio joined Catholic Action is because he was looking for a woman to marry, and he thought it was the right place to find her.
Okay, that's a very prudent man. That's right. Someone who's really living the faith. Catholic Action in Spain is not like Action Francais in France, which was liberal and modernistic. In Spain, like in Italy, it's the equivalent we would call Catholic Charities or Vincent de Paul Society.
I see that he was a master of many languages. Where did he learn to speak all of these? Ignacio received his training in public centers. He was never a student at private colleges or universities, but in addition to studying French as a second language in high school, he enrolled in the official language school to complete his knowledge of English, French, and German. Already being a professional, he paid for academies to continue improving his languages. In addition to that, he had his studies at the Sorbonne in Paris, where he necessarily had to reinforce his French, of which he came to have a high knowledge. He had a professional Leonardo scholarship, which he practiced in the German law firm in Nuremberg. He also enjoyed a foreign trade scholarship, which made him have a 1 year stay in Brussels. Before going to work in London, he had been out of Spain for 5 years.
Okay, so if you don't know the people of Navarre, of the Basque country, their native tongue Basque is a language very different from Romance languages and does everything in a different way. The verbs conjugate at the front, not at the rear. So if you can speak Basque, picking up Western languages is very easy. And so this is not surprising. Who's such a good linguist.
Can you tell me about his years of study at the Complutense University of Madrid in the Sorbonne? Ignacio enrolled in a career which gave the joint degree of a degree in Spanish law and master degree in French law, for which he was required to have previous knowledge of French, which I suppose he gave very justly. His classmates had studied at the Lyceum French or in other centers with much greater knowledge of the French language than him, but he did his studies overcoming the handicap of little knowledge of French and finally finished his studies. At the Sorbonne, he lost the course, I suppose in part because he faced a professor who, in Ignacio's opinion, gave Marxist dogma instead of the subject. He repeated the course with very little subject to study and had a year of boredom and a great feeling of failure, and overcame with his difficulties. Boredom is a great enemy. He looked for entertainment to get his spirits up. I think that faith was very important to him that year of solitude, because he barely had classes and the classmates he knew were no longer with him. Faith was always very important to overcome his setbacks.
Okay, so for those of you who are not students in the European system, I'll explain what happened here. So in the European system, if you take a course for like a specialization degree, it's going to be like a year or 2 year studies. And you listen, you attend all the classes, and you do some small works. But at the end of the year or 2 years, you have an oral exam in which you must show that you have mastered everything you studied and memorized it and know it cold. And if you fail that oral exam, you have to take the 2 years of classes all over again, not the exam over again. You have to take the classes over again. And this is evidently what happened to him in a 1 year course system. It's a big waste of time, a big waste of money, and it is called depression. We're a bit more rational in English speaking world. We allow the student to take the exam again.
So, what led him to go into banking instead of law? Ignacio was a shy man with great difficulties in job interviews. He was incapable of lying, of giving himself merits that he considered did not correspond to him. In Spain, practicing law is very difficult because there are too many law graduates. Most of them work in activities outside of the legal profession. His mother had a law firm in which she practiced with great will, but in reality, economically, it did not justify having it open, if our economy had not been defended by my salary. That office would not have been able to function. For a while, Ignacio worked in that office and saw that there was no future there.
Yeah, this is a big problem in Spain. There's a lot of educated people, but there's not much economic opportunity because the international bankers crushed the Spanish economy as a vendetta for the expulsion of the Jews under Queen Isabella.
When Ignatius took the job in London at HSBC as the money laundering prevention analysis, was it here that he grew up with a sense of justice and courage? No, Ignacio, all his life, since he was a child, he had a feeling that he should defend himself fairly, not tolerate being violated. That made life difficult for him on more than one occasion, because he acted where others were cowed. It's not that he was very brave, it is that he did not tolerate injustice.
Great character there, and that every man should nourish that character. That's especially a Spanish character. You don't want to insult a Spaniard. I'm not talking about in Latin America, but in Spain, honor is an important thing. And if you are unjust to a man, expect to get a kickback from a real man in Spain. And well, the history of Spain is full of events of those kind. And that's why they retook their land from the Moors, because they weren't going to suffer injustice. So here's a true son of Spain there.
Can you talk about the discussion you had with Ignatius after the first terrorist attack on Westminster Abbey, and how that led him to act so bravely during the second terrorist attack on London Bridge? On a visit to Spain approximately a fortnight before his death, he celebrated his birthday. His birthday was on May 25th, and this must have been around the 17th when there was talk on the occasion of the death of the policeman who confronted in Westminster to the terrace, and he died. Ignacio stated that if he had been there skating, that policeman would be alive. A brother told him, "You would be dead," and he shrugged his shoulders and said, "Well, um, so be it."
Hmm. And so, what does the father say about what happened? Did you ask him about what happens on June 3rd, 2017, 6 years ago?
Yeah. So, yeah, and he'll get into this.
Okay.
Where was Ignacio found later, uh, uh, after his martyrdom, and why was it so difficult to find him? Ignacio was located and identified from the first moment of his death. He was taken to a cold room in a hospital, but the United Kingdom was in elections, and I suspect they did not want too much talk about the tip. The, the tempted. They hid his death until a Frenchman appeared who was still missing, floating in the river. He died on a Saturday night, and we were not notified that he was located until Wednesday. Politicians submit to their interests those things over which they have control.
They hid the fact that he was killed. That's just absolute outrage.
Hmm. How long did you have to wait before you could see your son's remains in Spain? We were notified of Ignacio's death on Wednesday, and we were allowed to see the body on Thursday at noon after my children struggled with the coroner. The judge in the case did not want to deliver the body to us until the following week. Given the harshness expressed by my children in the trial, the coroner rectified after a brief interruption and said they will be able to see his body. It will be delivered to them on Saturday.
You probably wanted it for forensic evidence. The
Hmm.
English system has a different sense of forensic evidence with bodies. The Spanish, you hand the body over right away. It's a sacred duty.
Yeah. The news that Ignatius is being considered for beatification spread on social media. How is the process of this great step towards the canonization of your son going? And do those who prayed for your son's intercession have an answer? The bishop responsible for the causes of canonization of the Archdiocese of Madrid suggests that we promote the cause. We want Ignacio's death to be useful, although we know that what is done on earth will not change Ignacio's status in heaven. We believe that the more echo the death of Ignacio and his life have, the more useful his death will be. That is why we are promoting the cause. At this time, a postulator has been appointed who accepted the commission and is collecting testimonies both from Ignatius as a Catholic with ex, 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 uh, okay, EXEMPLARY,
Exemplary.
exemplary life, as well as from a fame of holiness. It is just that there are people who think that he is a reference or an example, as signs that there are people who entrust themselves to him and ask him for favors. There are testimonies in all three senses, and there are people who have formed prayer groups to ask for their intercession. You consider that this intercession was heard by God and obtained the requested favor. So, yes, miracles have happened.
Mhm. Okay. That you to finish your questions? We're going to find out what he did.
Hold on. Finally, if people want to come visit your son's grave, where should people go? Ignacio's grave is in the La Rosa Cemetery in Madrid. The new cemetery that is on the Avenida del Polo de Portoville. In the funeral home offices, they will report where his grave is. On occasions, a group of people have gone to pray at his grave. Also, in the parish that corresponds to us naturally, Nuestra Senora de la Visitación, there's a permanent exposition which includes some of the honors that were given to Ignatius posthumously. And I say thank you very much for allowing me to interview you about your son and his life. Sincerely, AJ Ballman, manager of OMC Radio TV.
Okay, so I want to thank Mr. Echeverria for granting this station an interview. This is a first, actually, for Ordo Militaris Radio TV, and it's an honor to be on with you, AJ, for the first Catholic channel in English-speaking world to make known his life. So now, what happened on June 3rd? What was the terrorist attack?
Yeah.
And what role did he play in attempting to stop it?
Yeah, get that. Okay, there you are. There we go. So, the 2017 London Bridge attack. The attack was carried out using a white Renault Master hired earlier on the same evening in Harold Hill, Havering by Curon Butt. He had intended to hire a 7.5-ton lorry, but was refused due to his failure to provide payment details. The attackers were armed with 12-inch kitchen knives with ceramic blades, which they tied to their wrists with leather straps. They also prepared fake explosive belts by wrapping water bottles in gray tape. At 21:58 BST time on June 3rd, 2017, the van traveled south across London Bridge and returned 6 minutes later, crossing over the bridge northbound, making U-turn at the northern end, and driving southbound across the bridge. It mounted the pavement 3 times and hit multiple pedestrians, killing 2. Witnesses said the van was traveling at high speeds. The 999 emergency calls were first recorded at 22:07. The van was later found to contain 13 wine bottles containing flammable liquids with rags stuffed in them, along with blowtorches. The van crashed on Borough High Street, after crossing the Central Reservation. The van's tires were destroyed by the Central Reservation, and 3 attackers, armed with knives, abandoned the vehicle. Then they ran down the steps of the Green Dragon Court, where they killed 5 people outside and near the Borough Bistro pub. After attacking the Borough Bistro pub, the attackers went back up the steps to Borough High Street and attacked 3 bystanders. Police tried to fight the attackers but were stabbed. Ignacio Echeverria helped them by striking Udon and possibly Zagbab with a skateboard. Echeverria was later killed outside Lobos Meats and Tapas. Members of the public threw bottles and chairs at the attackers. Witnesses reported that the attackers were shouting, "This is for Allah." People in around a number of restaurants and bars along Stony Street were also attacked. During the attack, an unknown man was spared by Rashid Ridoran, but despite many efforts, the man was never found. Romani and Baker hit one of the attackers over the head with a crate before giving shelter to 20 people inside the bakery inside Borough Market. One man fought the three attackers with his fists in a black and blue stakeout, shouting "Bleep you" on Milwaulee, giving the members of the public who were in the restaurant an opportunity to run away. He was stabbed 8 times in the hands, chest, and head. He underwent surgery at St. Thomas Hospital. He was taken off the critical list on June 4th. A British transport police armed with just a baton also took on the attackers, receiving multiple stab wounds and temporarily losing sight in his right eye as a consequence. Off-duty Metropolitan Police Constable Liam Jones and Stuart Henderson rendered first aid to seriously injured members of the public before protecting 150 people inside the Thameside Inn, evacuating them by Metropolitan Marine Support Unit RNLI boats to the north shore of Thames. The attackers were then shot dead by armed officers of the City of London and Metropolitan Police Specialist Firearms Command 8 minutes after the initial emergency call was made. CCTV footage showed 3 attackers in Borough Market running at the armed officers. The attackers were shot dead 20 seconds later. A total of 46 rounds were fired by 3 City of London and 5 Metropolitan Police officers.
What was the total number of victims for this attack?
So, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 people. 8 died. And 48 admitted to the hospital. 21 were in critical.
We have to thank Ignacio and all who fought back to delay these people, since they had an 8-minute killing spree, 8 or 9-minute killing spree, and any minute they could have killed dozens of more people. And so he did a wonderful thing. I have to remark that if you just have a skate in hand or a backpack, you're not really prepared to attack anyone. So Ignacio had a zeal and a daring beyond his. He doesn't seem to have ever been trained in hand-to-hand combat or had no military service record. So this is exceptional. This is an exceptional man who doesn't think of himself, but flies to the battle, a true crusading spirit. And we need more of this in today's generation when people see horrible things go on and just tweet about it and say, something must be done or we're all going to be killed, which is something that a woman can say without any fault. But if a man says that and he can do something, it's totally, entirely gay. What kind of impression you think his example is going to make on young men, AJ? You're somewhat younger than myself.
I would hope it would inspire more young men to imitate Ignacio in his faith and also in his courage and zeal for justice, and want to imitate doing what he did to help protect people.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ordo Militaris Catholicus is an international association of Catholics dedicated to defending Christians who are persecuted, especially who are targeted by terrorism. And we were founded about 9 months before, 10 months before Ignacio's martyrdom. And we call it a martyrdom, not because we're claiming a church authority, but because he's given witness by his death. And he died heroically, because Christ says, greater love no man hath than to lay down his life for his friends. And he gave his life trying to save people he didn't even know, which is even greater than giving it for your friends. And we in our order feature and talk about these great men of our age, and we name them heroes of our order, though we have a list of patron saints of our website. And God willing, if he is beatified or canonized, I will certainly try to be at the ceremony since I live in Rome myself. And we need more heroes of this kind. But, you know, if you're a young man out there and you were inspired by Ignacio's example, but you haven't learned hand-to-hand combat, think of signing up for our youth camp in Europe, because that's what we're going to teach the men. 20 men for a year's training. They're going to be expert. And so if they see anything on the streets, they'll be able to save lots of lives because they know how to take down these people, even if at the time they find themselves they're not armed. And it's a wonderful way to start a career in security, military, or police work. And our program is going to be open to young men 18 to 24 years of age who are not employed and want to get a start on life. And we're looking for men that have this kind of zeal and this kind of courage and daring, because, there's no point training someone who's not going to use the skills. Right? Someone who wants the skills because he wants to use them to defend innocent people. And may Ignacio Echeverria pray for us and intercede for us with some guardian angels of some really zealous young men like himself, and send them to our program. And AJ will put the contact information in the show notes of this program.
Yeah, thank you to Mr. Echeverria on letting me interview and by email with questions in Spanish, and let me to read it in English for this program. And yeah, I hope you like this program, and please share it. And yeah, so this is Order Militaris Video TV signing off. Deus Vol.
Deus Vol.